A new survey from FSU's Institute for Governance and Civics found that, among other conclusions, 20% of young adults say they think violence can be justified to stop harmful speech. Institute Director Ryan Owens joins Gina Jordan to talk about what the findings mean for free speech and political polarization.
Do you consider some kinds of speech to be just as bad as violence? Would you possibly resort to violence to stop speech that you think might be harmful? Let's talk about a new survey that shows 1 in 5 young adults say violence can be justified in order to stop harmful speech. This is a national survey. It's from Florida State University's Institute for Governance and Civics. That report is titled Americans' Troubling Views on Speech, Harm, and Violence. I'm joined by report co-author, professor, and institute director Ryan Owens. Welcome, Ryan.
Howdy.
Howdy. Tell us about the Institute.
Well, I'm really excited about the Institute and what we're doing. We were created about 1.5 years ago to rectify what the legislature perceived to be a real gap in civic awareness and civic knowledge. And so we were charged with, broadly speaking, doing what we could to enhance civic awareness, make sure that the intellectual offerings on campus expose students to good civics ideas. I came on board here about 1 year ago. I moved down here from the University of Wisconsin, where I'd been for 13 years. And I thought to myself, all right, what can we do to create something really meaningful, productive, and effective here? And so I quickly realized there are 4 pillars of liberty that we want to focus on here at the IGC: constitutional liberty, economic liberty, conscience liberty, and education liberty. If we're able to teach people about those 4 areas, conduct research in those 4 areas, and have programming, speakers, and the like, I think we'll go a long way towards creating a culture of free speech and basically create effective citizens and responsible leaders.
Do you teach respect? Because that seems to be something that's missing lately.
Yeah. One of the things that I try to drill into my students is the notion of humility, right? You may believe 100% that your perspective is correct and that everybody else is wrong, but you have to have some humility. At one time in the world, we thought that the earth was flat. We don't always know the truth, and it's important for us to understand that.
What are some of the degree programs that would go through the IGC?
Yeah, we're building these up right now. So what I am working to create right now is something called the Civics and Liberty Studies degree program, where students will take a core set of courses on things like the First Amendment, civil discourse, statistics, great books of the Western world. So civics and liberty studies with concentrations in those 4 pillars of liberty that I mentioned before.
That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's going to be a great program.
Yeah. Well, you're in a great position to answer this question. Are we more politically polarized than ever? Does it just seem that way, or is it really this bad?
Well, it's bad. And, whether it's the worst or the second worst, I mean, who cares at that point, right? We got both kinds, country and Western. So I think we've got a real problem today. I think social media has a lot to do with it. I also think we're so motivated today by feelings and by just the emotions that drive us. And really, if we want to be free and rational beings, we've got to learn to overcome those impulses. So yes, we are polarized, and I think we have to throw everything we can at trying to get to the root causes of that polarization and what it's doing to us socially, politically, and economically.
Yes. Your survey finds that 20% of people ages 18 to 29 say violence can sometimes be justified to stop harmful speech. What is considered harmful speech?
Yeah. So we didn't define that in the poll, right? We just said harmful speech. And there's a reason why, because there are legal definitions, there are moral definitions that people may use. So we kind of put this in the eye of the beholder, if you will. From my perspective, I think that makes the results even more alarming because people are able to define harmful as they see fit in this poll. And if you dig down a little bit further into the data, if you look at ideology, partisanship, things like that, you get some interesting results where 31% of young liberals think that it's okay to do this. Conservatives are a little bit less. This is not exclusively a problem for liberals and progressives, but we do see the results overwhelmingly sort of affected by those groups more.
And I'm guessing this wasn't specified either, but the type of violence, was that discussed?
Just physical violence. Yeah,
Okay.
physical violence. Now, we did follow up in a separate survey that we're still working through on some things with FSU students about when do you think it would be appropriate to do something like rush the stage to stop a speaker or protest loudly in a speaker's event. We're still working through the results on that, so you can look forward to seeing some of those results in the near future.
Great, yeah. Well, having 1 in 5 young adults say they support physical violence to stop certain speech is certainly striking.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what's driving this attitude.
I think there are a couple of reasons for this. And I should add to this, not only do we have 20% saying that they agreed with that you could sometimes use violence to stop speech, there were approximately, I think, 25% who said they weren't sure. And even that alone, I think, is kind of alarming. I would say absolutely no, you don't do this. But at any rate, so what's the cause of it? I think obviously social media is a big factor, particularly among young people. I don't think their brains are suited enough for it yet. I don't think they've formed sufficiently that they can sort of comprehend and deal with what's happening there. I also think more broadly, though, we have a tremendous problem in society today with avoiding conflict. I mean, students are taught from a very young age, avoid conflict, right? Be nice. Everybody has to get along. And I think generally that's a polite thing to do. But when it goes so far as to prevent people from voicing their opinions for fear of being rebuked, and when we don't have people who are embracing good, healthy conflict, that's a problem. I mean, a healthy republic only operates with conflict. That is normal, is to have conflict. What we don't need is to avoid it. What we need to do is channel that conflict into reasonable, rational discussion.
That is an excellent observation. People don't know how to debate.
Yeah, and debate and just disagree. You know,
Right.
I taught a class a couple of years ago now, back when I was at University of Wisconsin. It was called Liberalism, Conservatism, and the Idea of America. And it was me and a buddy of mine, a faculty member. We don't really see politics eye to eye at all, but we very much liked each other. And what we would do was we would sit up in front of, the 200 students in that classroom. We would debate some of the issues, go back and forth, and we respected one another tremendously. And the students after the class said, we've never seen this sort of thing before. We respected each other, and they loved it, and they want to see more of that.
Well, it's interesting to watch when you have people on opposing sides actually have that conversation and see how deeply you can go into that discussion. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Interestingly, this report found that these young adults might equate speech with violence, and those who believe that are more willing to use force to prevent the speech in question.
Right.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so if you are of the mindset that speech can be as harmful as violence, then you are much more likely to try to shut down speech. And that's the bottom line here. So if we ask folks, do you think that free speech should give way to things like social harmony and inclusion? The people who would agree that speech could be violence were much, much more likely to say, yes, free speech should give way. And in fact, if we took a look just at everybody here, we found that 37% said that free speech should sometimes be restricted when it conflicts with broad notions of inclusivity. So this is what I kind of get back to earlier when I'm saying people are being taught that disagreement is a bad thing, right? Now when you're getting free speech versus, hey, let's all get along, there's a substantial percentage, over a third of people who are saying, yeah, you should just shut up and sit down. Now, what I'm always interested in with these questions is, who do these people think are going to make the determinations of who can speak and who can't? Is it you? Are you the enlightened dictator, right? Or is it the government? Is it your peers? And when you start breaking that down a little bit and you have discussions with students about who should decide, the results then kind of start to break up a little bit.
Well, that's what I was wondering. Was there any distinguishing between legal free speech versus speech that they just find offensive?
Yeah. Now, it's tough to get into these, right? Because there are people out there who think that hate speech is a legal doctrine, and it is not. There is no such thing in the law called hate speech, but yet that notion prevails. And so, one of the reasons why we want to train people about the First Amendment and free speech is, yes, we want people to be familiar with what things are and what things aren't legal. But more importantly, what we're trying to do, certainly at the IGC, is to cultivate a culture of free speech and free expression.
Yeah. These results are interesting enough. Were there some other survey findings that stood out to you?
Well, one of the things that we found in this survey and others is that civic education, not just general education, but civic education, is really something that we can use to prevent this kind of attitude from sinking in. So we found that knowing the facts of how the government works, why it works the way it does, the more civic education they had, the less likely they were to embrace political violence, the less likely they were to say that disagreement makes them feel uncomfortable. So this is not just about educating the public. If you want to really make more effective citizens and responsible leaders, you've got to train them with civic education. That's all part and parcel of what we're trying to do at the IGC.
Yeah. Politicians have to get some of the blame here, right? I mean, there's just such a lack of respect and decorum. And I think it must be hard to try to teach civic education, teach respect when the students are seeing and hearing what's out there every day.
Yeah. Politics is in a bad state right now. There's no nuance any longer in politics. I myself was involved with a political campaign a number of years back, and it's very difficult. People expect purity from candidates right now. You have to toe the ideological line all the time, and they want to see gotcha moments. I mean, maybe a couple of months ago, some prominent Democratic politicians came out and said, our voters, our primary voters, want us to take a bullet for their positions. They want us to shed blood for them, and that scares us remarkably. I don't think that's exclusive to the left, to be sure, but that is the phenomenon. And I would like to see more responsible behavior from many of our politicians. I think that could be useful. People want to see that. And, I used to work for Governor Tommy Thompson up in Wisconsin, and Tommy used to say, no one party has a monopoly on good ideas or the truth. You may think that one has much more than the other, and that's totally fine. But you have to be intellectually curious and open-minded enough to be able to embrace ideas that maybe you didn't identify with originally, if they merit your support.
Mm-hmm. I think there has to be a little bit of a tie here. The murder of conservative activist Charlie Kirk was terrible.
Yeah.
But then, you also see on social media stuff that is in line with what you found in the survey. There were people that said, this is awful, this is terrible, but maybe he shouldn't have been saying all those things.
Yeah. That event really brought out the best and the worst in a lot of people. Yeah, this type of reactionary behavior is not limited to one side, the other side. I mean, we have become reactionary as a political group, and that's a problem, right? What we need to do is get back to asking questions like why. I recently talked to a guy who actually gets into these street conversations, and when he encounters people who have really strong beliefs one way or the other, he often asks them, not why do you believe what you do, because people have a tendency to sort of dig in, get defensive when you ask them why. What he does instead is he asks them, how confident are you in that belief on a scale of 1 to 10? What would you need to become more confident, or what would make you less confident in that perspective? And then they're able to sort of take that conversation from there. Interesting idea.
Yeah. So it sounds like there wasn't necessarily some kind of common denominator in your findings with this survey. Like if you had to zero in on social media use or education level or political affiliation, not really one obvious thing?
No, I mean, the two things that I pull from this predominantly are, number one, that younger people are much more likely to embrace political violence than older people are, and I think that's a problem. And number two, from this and other studies, it's just the notion that civic education matters. It can prevent some really bad stuff from happening.
Yeah. Just getting a little more into the risks here when we're talking about civil discourse and freedom of speech. You've alluded to this, but based on this survey, it sounds like something needs to turn around because we may not have civil discourse much longer.
I hate to laugh about it, but goodness gracious. Yeah, I think you can find it. A couple of things. Number one, national politics today is a mess. And I tell my students, friends, family, whomever, if you really want to effectuate change in politics or see your perspective put into policy, avoid national politics. Get into state or local politics. You're much more likely to see change there. But the other thing is, I think state and local politics, it ain't great either. But your ability to look somebody in the eye is crucial. You're much less likely to see negative discourse when you're actually looking at somebody in the eye. You're in person. That kind of keyboard courage that you see on online posting goes away. So if we focus on state and local, a lot of times I think we'll be more. I think we'll be better off if we put it that way.
Yeah. So some civics education is important. Any other strategies that quickly come to mind as far as what we might do to reduce support for violence as a response to speech?
Yeah, I think in addition to the civics education, I think just being aware of other perspectives and ideas. Universities, I think, by and large, universities have done a very bad job of exposing students to multiple views. I think FSU is sort of an exception to the rule. I'm pretty proud of what FSU has done and what we're continuing to do. But I think exposing yourself to a multiplicity of perspectives and speakers is a good idea. The other thing to think about is this. Where I grew up, it was a mixture of blue-collar, white-collar workers. My best friend up until about 5th or 6th grade lived in a trailer park. My other really good friend, his father was a vice president at Fiskars, right? And so I grew up with a bunch of kids that some were well off, many were not, many were just middle class, lower middle class. And I learned from that and my experience working at Denny's and a pizza place, just a variety of perspectives on life and people in different economic classes, if you will. I think a lot of kids today grow up and they're surrounded by people who are just like them. I ask my students in classes, how many of your parents are carpenters? How many of them were bricklayers, right? Nobody raises their hands. Say, any of your friends? No. I think we have a problem just socially where we live, not mixing it up with other people. And that, I think, is a tremendous problem.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about how this survey was conducted? We should let people know when it happened and how many people. Yeah.
So this was about a little over 1,400 folks nationwide. We had a slight oversample in Florida so that we could try to determine whether Florida was any different than nationwide. On this particular survey, Florida looks a lot like the nation as a whole. But we worked with the national pollsters. This firm that we're working with is one of the best in the country. I should put in a plug. We've got another survey, too, that just came out working with this same outfit where we looked at people's views on what's going on in Israel right now. And that's pretty telling as well. I mean, happy to get into it if you'd like.
Well, yeah, let's hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. So at this same time period here, we reached out to folks nationwide and asked them questions about their views on the war in Israel. And we asked some questions taking our cues from a recent YouGov poll, which asked people if they thought that Israel was committing genocide against Palestinians and Gazans and the like. And there was a shockingly high number who said yes. And what we wanted to do is figure out whether people actually thought that Israel intended to do that or whether it's just a byproduct of what's going on and where Gazans are located, where the civilians are located near military installations and like. Anyways, the bottom line here that we got from this is that there is a huge difference in views towards Israel among liberals and conservatives. We asked them, does Israel intend to harm civilians? 50% of liberal respondents said yes, Israel intentionally seeks to harm civilians, and only 9% of conservatives thought that. But the other thing that I found remarkable was that even among conservatives, the divide between older conservatives and younger conservatives was stark. Younger conservatives are much less friendly towards Israel than older conservatives are. And so I think this explains some of the chaos that exists right now on the right in how to treat Israel and its conflict with Palestine and Gaza and others.
Wow. It would be interesting to know why. Why is this a political thing?
Yeah. Well, I think that you merge these two survey results that we've got, with younger people being more tolerant of political violence, and this other one where younger people are taking a much harsher view on Israel. What we're seeing from these two things is that this 18 to 29-year-old cohort is just very, very different than older cohorts across multiple questions. And so if we're trying to figure out what to take away from all of this, I mean, one of the things I walk away from is 18 to 29-year-olds are just very, very different. Because they've been raised in the social media environment, I think their perspectives on things is a little bit different. It's not necessarily to say that they're wrong. I think on some things they are, but on others, they're just very different, and we have to get at them better through teaching, right? To explain the fundamental principles of that culture of free speech, respect for individual dignity and autonomy, things like that. I'm just seeing that across all these polls that we do.
Wow, yeah. You've said the results of this survey regarding speech and violence showed that the work of the Institute for Governance and Civics has never been more urgent. So
right.
What's next for you in your pursuit of that mission?
Well, thank you for asking.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I mean, we're really fired up about what we're doing here. So recently, we created a First Amendment clinic at the law school, where law students will take cases up pro bono to defend things like religious liberty interests, free speech rights. I think that's going to be just a tremendous benefit to the university and to the broader notion of this culture of free speech. We're working on that civics and liberty studies degree program. I am trying to raise funds for student fellowships where we can, for example, send students to battlefields from the Civil War, the Revolutionary War, so they can see what happened, why we had the conflict that we did in the Civil War, what it means, what are the legacies of it still. Send them to, Europe where they can see what happened under communist rule and see the ravages of that sort of dictatorial autocracy that exists. We're working on creating some things on campus right now that I'm loosely calling a Liberty Trail, where we can take some of the texts from American founding documents, etch them into a permanent structure like a stone, put them around campus so students can go see these things. And then what I really want to do, and I think we're close to this, is put QR codes on these things so that you can take out your phone and now through AI interact with some of the founders in virtual reality space. So
cool.
We are trying to get students, adults, everybody excited about American civics, American history, because it is, I don't think people understand or appreciate just how unique and how lucky we are here to have the structure that we have, where we have Congress competing with the executive all in an effort to protect our liberty, where we've got a constitution that's written down, where we have rights and liberties that say what Congress can and can't touch. This is a real special thing, and we need to protect it. We need to cherish it. We need to teach the next generation of students about how important this is.
Well, we wish you the best. This has been very enlightening. Ryan Owens, Director of the Institute for Governance and Civics at FSU. We look forward to seeing what you do. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate the time. Thanks for having me on.